numbers are just way too big or way too small to be able to do anything real with. I'm going to scale it. That looks maybe more plausible. So I would try to adjust these numbers to get that as big as possible. So that's called logistic regression because I'm using this logistic S-shaped curve. Here I'm just using one variable, but just like in the other one, I could have this chemical and that chemical and that chemical, and each of them will get its own coefficient. So that's logistic regression. And it's a classical technique in statistics. I mean, it goes back decades or so, but it's kind of found some new uses. It's not the only way you would do classification like this. Another way that is reasonably common these days is called support vector machines. So you say, like, how much chemical X does someone have? How much chemical Q? And then we'll plot the people who did and didn't get cancer in different colors. So I might have a bunch of people who did not get cancer, and then some people who did get cancer. We'll put them in. So what does this data set tell you the way I drew it? They're kind of clustered. And having a high value of, a high medium value of chemical X is not necessarily bad, but if you combine it with a high value of chemical Q, then you're kind of more likely to get, so there's an interaction between the two. So I might want to draw a line, and the line might go like that to say, if I test someone's blood and find these two levels and they're on this side of the line, then I'll say I don't think you're going to get it. And if they're on this side of the line, we'll say I think you will get it. So we want to draw that line so it perfectly separates the data. How often is that possible? Hardly ever. Right? There's something where we want to say, I want the data to be far away from the line, so I'm going to put kind of a lane down the middle, almost like curves and a center stripe. And I want to make the road as wide as possible. That way, I don't want the line to be right on the edge of these points. Okay. So this is the perfectly separable case. Which hardly ever happens. More realistic would be to have some data points here, and some over here, and then you'd want to do something that did a reasonably good job separating, but still allowed to have misclassifications. Something like that. You still kind of put the curves on the road, sort of. So this is called the soft margin case. So soft margin SVMs are pretty handy. Yeah.
Is it always going to be like a linear line like that? Or
That's a good question. Like, well, what if this data is not linearly separable, but is separable according to some other line? So let's write that down. So you can do it in this space, but there's a way to translate it to another space. It's usually higher dimensional, and the name is the kernel trick. We're kind of running out of time, so you can go read the kernel trick yourself. Fortunately, support vector machines are really resistant to overfitting. We've had like the sum squared residuals term and the regularization term. As they're written, support vector machines are almost all regularization. So they're kind of resistant to overfitting. A lot of these methods, so linear, logistic regression, linear regression, and SVMs are nice because they give you a coefficient on each value. And in some applications, like credit scoring, you have to be able to tell the customer, you got this credit score because you have a lot of accounts you opened in the last week, or because you didn't make payments on this account 10 years ago or something. You have to be able to explain why you got the result you got, because the law says you have to send a letter to the customer explaining why they didn't get credit. So these models are nice because you can say, well, here's the effect of this value, and so that's why they got such a low score. There's other methods, like neural networks, and deep learning. There's decision trees. Actually, decision trees themselves are kind of explainable, but also random forests. And those are very hard to explain why the thing came up with the decision it did. Random forests are kind of one of the leaders in most of the casual competitions these days. But you can't use them in certain applications because they can't explain why they came up with what they came up with. All right, I want to close by mentioning one book that's really good. It's called Weapons of Math Destruction. And it talks about the effects of machine learning on society. The library has it, which is to say, I checked it out from the library. It's sitting at my house, but I'll give it back any day now. So it's things like credit scoring, right? Should you include someone's race when you're making credit scoring decisions? No, that's illegal and immoral, right? But if you include things like what's the property values around this person's house, that's strongly correlated with race. And so is it legal to include? Yes. Does it end up effectively discriminating against certain races? Yes, it does. Do we have laws that say people have to explain their models? Not yet. I mean, in some applications, yes, but there's a lot of stuff where you just, maybe you don't get denied credit, but you get offered a higher interest rate, and you just don't know that someone else with the same basic characteristics who lives in a different neighborhood might get offered a lower rate. So it's a really interesting book, and I recommend you read up on all this ethics of big data stuff. All right. Is anyone doing any projects that might need any of this stuff for the class, or have I screwed you all on?
Some of them are doing.
Okay, so you can email me and say what you got so far and ask for help and stuff. All right, thank you very much for having me in and for coming to these special sessions.
Thank you.